Hello everyone, and today I will show and tell how to unlock magic within UIs using View Transition API. So my name is Emīls Pļavenieks, and in the past few years I have had many titles like lead front-end developer, senior full-stack engineer, but I would call myself simply a passionate coder who gets paid for doing his hobby daily. So yeah, also you can talk to me about other things that I'm interested in. I'm also a code golfer, multiple hackathon winner, motorcycle track rider, husband and father of 2 beautiful daughters, specialty coffee shop co-owner, and day by day I try to go with everything is possible mentality. If not today, you can also reach out to me via the email down below or GitHub handle. You can also visit my website. It's currently a work in progress since 2020. I think a default in the industry, but yeah. So have you ever seen something like this and thought, what kind of sorcery is this? Like all these beautifully, smoothly animated screens, like changing places and continuing videos and all that stuff. So what if I would say that this is now achievable easier than ever before using View Transition API. So basically it's 2 APIs. The first is same page, easily adjustable or added to any single page application or just a single page. It's mainly driven by JavaScript, so we need to call the transitions with JavaScript, and later on we can customize with CSS, but we can literally animate anything, and with that I mean anything. So imagine what was not before, now it's possible. And it's so simple to use that I can bet any one of you that you can start using this today or even right now. And a good thing for it is that it provides good fallback and switch off mechanics that it will not break your code, it will just gradually enhance it. And the second one is across pages, which can be applied to multiple page applications or just web pages. Yeah, basically it's when you open another page and you get this animation transferred to the next page. It uses only a single HTML meta tag, and then it can be furthermore enhanced using CSS. And it's already available in most of the browsers, meaning that every browser that's Chromium based, also Safari. Unfortunately, Firefox has a very long thread in their community forums about what needs to be done in order to achieve these transitions, so I wouldn't expect Firefox to have these APIs anytime soon. But overall, just looking and trying yourself, it feels like you're doing magic. Like imagine your first project from 2005 and you just have these cool animations from one page to another. Like I remember back then there were these flash pages which had only animations, and everything else was, yeah, you just can't do any animations at the time. So today we are going to focus on the single page animations and API. And as I said, it's mainly driven by JavaScript. That means that we can pick any DOM modification we want to do to the page. We will tell the browser that we will do it, and then we just do it. And in the code, it looks like this. So it's a wrapper where you put in your DOM modification, and basically that's it. Browser will do the rest of the magic and transition between the stages. So what's actually happening underneath, if we would do a very, very big simplification of the process, it's since we're calling the JavaScript API from the document start view transition, browser knows that we do intend to make some modification to the DOM. At that point, the browser takes a snapshot of the page. Yeah, there's also a few details, but first it makes a snapshot of the page and kind of, we could tell that it freezes the page. Then it actually applies this modification that we want to do, and after the modification is done, it takes another snapshot, which is the new one, and then it beautifully transitions from the old one to the new one. So what are these snapshots, and what's the transition, and what's actually happening? Like, what do I mean with the browser tries to freeze our screen and all that stuff? So there's an attempt to visually represent this by, like, this CodePen has this transition, view transition in it. And the DOM modification itself is simply changing inner text for, let's say, a paragraph node. And when we call this JavaScript API for start view transition, what's actually happening? So it knows that we will want to make this transition, so the browser creates this old snapshot, new snapshot, and what happens next? Then it adds a few of pseudo elements to the page. Mainly, the view transition is the one that holds all of the possible transitions we have told the browser to do. Then comes the next group, which is view transition group, and in the parentheses, there will be different names of the groups. So by default, it's a single group, it's root, so it means for the whole screen, but we can also apply different namings for specific groupings. Then there's the next layer of pseudo elements, that is image pair, which basically takes care of blend modes. So it blends smoothly together, but it's more directly seeable when applied to multiple page applications. Then we can also do some sort of magic to it. And the last layer is the view transition old, and then it switches to the new. So this is actually where are these two snapshots stored, and it makes this crossfade animation or transition. So from what we saw, those are two lines of code that we can start to gradually add to our applications. Yeah, and that's basically it. So if we can check if the browser supports it by just checking if document start view transition. Yeah, there are different kinds how to check it, but this is the simplest one, and we can just, if it supports it, we just wrap our modify function within this callback. We can also create a quick polyfill ourselves. I will have that later in the demo, so we don't have to write this if-else statement, but we can always try to wrap it in it, and yeah, it will just work. Also, as I said, the current support for this is quite good, except Firefox. And yeah, I wouldn't expect it to have that anytime soon. Crossfade. So the crossfade is by default the animation for this API. And it's good because it's like a reduced motion animation, so it doesn't cause this motion sickness for some people. And it's just good by default because all we did just wrap our code within 2 lines, and we already get some kind of animation to it and like this feedback for the user that their actions actually did something on the page. So a demo of, I will show the source code as well. So basically I have here just buttons. I have attached event handlers to the button, and this is a flex grid. And what I will do is I just have over here justify content and align items. So this is something that was not so simple or even impossible to animate before. And now we can just click the button, and as we can see, it crossfades to the new position. And all of this is pretty much achievable just by wrapping here in start view transition. And that's it. But then there's more. Like, okay, crossfade is cool, but we want to make it more live, right? And then we can get into like this term morphing. And morphing is something that transitions an element from one place, position, and shape into another. And this we can get with the third line of code, which is we just group this element into a specific transition group just by giving a name to it. And we can give this name either by CSS or apply it dynamically via JavaScript just with the Elements API that we have. And what this will do is pretty much, what this will do, it will pretty much add automatic morphing to this element. So basically, it's instead of taking this whole picture or snapshot of the whole screen, it understands that this specific element should be grouped into a separate transition. So it takes only that grouped element position and place and size from one transition to the second, and then it can morph. And morphing can cause some motion sickness for people. So browsers do provide options to opt in and opt out for this. So just to respect these rules, we can just add a media query for our CSS, and that's it. So few examples. So we have the same example that we had before, where we can just click whatever position we want and it crossfades. So as I said, we will just specify a transition name for it. And we can see it starts to morph instead of crossfade. So it's that simple. Another example, and this is pretty much whatever we will type in here will be applied to this heading 1 element. So we can go wild with whatever we want, and we can see that it crossfades this animation into it. So any suggestions what I should write here?
Letter spacing.
How many? Let's go. Boom. We can even transform it, like rotate or scale it up. And then we can remove everything as well, and it will do all of these transitions within a one. And as I said, we can animate anything, right? So we can also animate display none without any additional magic to it. So we don't need to use visibility or anything. We just type display none or display block or whatever, and we get this for free. Another cool thing with this is that since the browser is taking this snapshot before and after, but it tries to keep the page live, it doesn't stop any continuous videos or animations that we have on the page, and it does not try to like block them or whatever. So if you look closely at the GIF underneath, so once it explodes, I will move it, it actually continues the animation. The same applies to videos, but with videos it would just take more space. And the last demo here would be that we can also morph anything into anything, meaning that we can morph this button into a model. We can morph this button into the same model. We can morph maybe a link into a model. We can pretty much make anything become anything and morph it. This transition can be done to pretty much anything that we can think of. So it does feel kind of magical when you think about it, and it's only pretty much with 3 lines of code, maybe a bit more for a few more exhausted examples. And then we can even go further. So this API, since it creates a pseudo elements on the page, it gives us the possibilities to actually style it with CSS and apply some different rules to these pseudo elements while they are happening. So for example, if we would want to like change the width of a button, like dynamically, let's say we click this button and it changes the content of it, so the width changes, it initially gets this crossfade. If we add the transition name for it, it kind of gets this morphing, but I will show later it gets slightly a bit weird. So in order to keep this momentum like eased, we can apply specific rules to these animation images that we have. For example, here we target specifically the old and the new one, and since I showed that we can also add these morphings to display none, we can also specify when an element is entering the DOM and when it's leaving. So for example, if we change some element from display none to display block, this will be like the new one, and it will not have the pair, it will not have the old one. So we can target it with specifically view transition new, have our element, and tell discretely that we only want to apply these rules when this is the only child. So when it's entering the page, we want to, let's say, slide it in from the left and fade it in, but when it's going out, we want to like slide this out the other way around. And here I will not have a demo, unfortunately. Okay, but I should. Okay, I will quickly exit full screen. Nope. Okay, then I will show this slightly later, but the browsers, for example, Chrome already gives us the dev tooling to debug this and see what happens exactly at which phases of these transitions. So just to recap, we can basically transition anything using this API with just 2 or 3 lines of code. We can opt in for morphing or leave it at crossfade. And we can customize these animations even further with applying custom CSS rules. And we can specify specific entry and exit animations or rules that should be applied to these elements. And okay, so all of these examples were very simple and easy to understand, right? But in real life, we usually understand that it's a bit more complex and there's more detail to it. So for that purpose, I have prepared a demo where currently we have 3 tabs. Each tab pretty much just changes the content. I have very simple on-click handler on these tabs, and I have 3 divs within the content, and it just adds a show or hide class to it. So yeah, nothing very fancy or nothing like even to look at, right? Just the spinning logo there. So what we can do is let's first animate this like border underneath, and for me I have done it with an pseudo element that is after, so it's within, and we can add specific rules to it, not just using the border bottom, but let's say here where we have, sorry, I'll enlarge it a bit, where we have tabs. So this is the select tab function, and what we want to do is we just want to wrap it within the view transition, and that's it. So if we do it now, we already see that, okay, this crossfade is starting to happen at the page, and all we did was we just added 2 lines of code basically. Now we can see that, yeah, it crossfades, but we want to enhance our bottom animation. So we remember that I said if we give this element a transition group name, it will actually morph it automatically. And here, for this after element, that's this bottom border, we just added a transition name, and now it beautifully slides over, and it also changes the color while doing that. Like, what would you need to do this beforehand? Right? All the magic happening in the JS and the DOM and the CSS. So it wasn't that complex, but it was more than 3 lines. So, okay, next one. We have this accordion, but it lacks animation, right? So we pretty much just add show or hide. Again, the content of this is using display none. What we will do is we will find where we have this handler to add the class open, and we will just, again, wrap it within start view transition. And now if we look at, we get this crossfade animation. It's already good, but accordions usually like have this sliding animation, right? So what we can do to achieve that is we just find the accordion and we just, again, wrap it, or not wrap it, we just specify a group name for it. And now, okay, it does not morph. Like, why is that? And if we remember, this is because like it does not have the previous element to go from, because it only just appeared in the page. So then there is a bit of magic to it. Right here. Nope. Yeah, it was this one. So basically, what we can also do is for this element, like it's when it comes into the view from display none to display block, it just is there. But we want to apply this graduality to it, granularity, so it like slowly builds up to the element that we want to display. And we can do that with overflow hidden pretty much, that it starts to appear on the line first, but the rest of it is hidden. So the line 2 appears, the rest of it is hidden, and all of this happens like over time. So over time, the content pretty much stretches out and we have this smooth like sliding animation. But if we see closely, the background is not going along with it. It's just either this tall or larger. So what we do is now we try to apply the morphing for the background. And now the background slides as well with the content. So it's again a few lines of code and we actually have achieved this accordion component.
Can you slow it down a little bit more?
Yeah.
Okay.
You mean the animation?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's find it. Right here we can animation timing. I think it was this. Nope. It was animation duration, not timing. Where is it? Like this. So yeah, it's not so pretty when you slow it down because there's a lot happening on the page, but yeah. Also, another thing to slow it down is the dev tools that I mentioned, right? So here we can add the animation from given dev tools, and by default it's on 100%, but we can slow it down. We can, let's say, put it on 10%, and it will also slow the animation down. Then we can click into this animation that happened. We can find specific points in time, like we can pause this. We can find specific points in time, what transition or rather animation effects were used, at what point and what time. We can also like, this is, I think it's because of the iframe. We should have been able to click within, like click on these handlers and also see the pseudo elements live in the page. so we could inspect them and apply custom styling, but for some reason it's not allowing me to do this. A pity. Okay. So yeah. Now, another like real life use example is the sidebar. So what we usually do with the sidebars is we don't want to like change the width of it, because then the content like squashes long and then comes back and all that fancy stuff. So we usually have this fixed width and it's just hidden outside of the screen, right? And then it's like slowly like has its, let's say, right -300, and then it has right 0, and it just animates this transition. But here we actually have, again, it simply with a display none. And what we can do is we just go to the sidebar. We, again, wrap it within this single function. And now it shows up. But this showing up is not what we wanted. So again, we remember that adding a group name will make it morph, right? So that's what we did. And now if we go to this example, it's not working. Then we remember again, okay, so it has display none. So what do we need to do? It doesn't have this before and after state, it only has this after state. So what we want to do is we add when the view transition new for the sidebar group is the only child, we want to add animation to it that it will slide in from the left. So now it will slide in. But if we toggle it back, it just fades away. So we have set this animation only for the incoming element, and we can do something very similar for outgoing, because now it will have the old state, and the new state is that it's gone from the page. So we need to target the old one when it's the only child, and we make it slide out right. And now we have this beautiful animation with a bit more than 3 lines, but it doesn't surpass 10, I think.
Can you show the values of those CSS variables?
Yeah, these are actually used from open props. It's pretty much I gathered, I can just show you. Yeah, not so pretty, but open props, animations. Right here. So these are all the animations it has like preset for us. Of course, we can use our custom animation functions and easings and all that stuff, but just for the sake of the demo, we can also use something that has prepared this already for us. Okay, so now we have the sidebar, and then I also said that we can pretty much morph anything into anything. And this starts to get in the territory that it's a bit more complex, but I will just quickly show you and not really tell what I do, maybe slowly along the lines. But if I take this magic, because I said I will show you the magic, right? Let's put it here. Also note, while I'm doing this, the start view transition is an async function, and we can await for it to be finished before we want to do some other things. And give me a second. This one. So now we can see the logo is spinning, and if we toggle here, it spins into an element. So we can, before we remember that we had these elements already in the page, but we can pretty much at any point tell the browser that you are going there and we don't care about the rest. It's just what you need to do, and the browser will take care of the rest. And if we can see, like, we could actually slow down the animation right now, and we can see that it applies, okay, that's a bit too slow. It applies all these transition phases. So the logo was spinning, and it takes whatever position it was at that time, and now it will return to continuous animation that the browser, the logo is spinning actually. So yeah, it's pretty much makes a statement that we can do whatever we want on the page, right? And by the way, I use view transition, and this presentation uses the second API that is multiple pages. So there's a source code for this presentation as well, but actually right here you can see it's an HTML page, and I can go to the previous and it changes these pages, right? And as you can see, the title is actually animated between these transitions from HTML file to HTML file. And this is the second API, and all I had to do to enable that is add a single meta tag to every HTML file I have. So what I showed was pretty much the native JavaScript API and CSS. Okay, that's cool, but nowadays we pretty much use any frameworks or libraries to build our applications, for example, React, right? And the good thing is that the adoption for this has gradually got better. It was first, like the first drafts and the implementations came out roughly at the, well, like stable implementations at the end of 2023. Since then, Astro library framework is the one that picked up it first. The Next.js, I know, has lately shipped out an experimental versions for this to have the transitions between the pages as well. React also has tried to done its take at this. There are a few caveats to it, but it can be used, and with experimental builds there are even more tooling to it, but without using these experimental builds for React, we can also have some light animations as well. You would maybe get all these fancy custom things, but the simple things can be done. So, questions?